We do. Scott Ostler, sports columnist, San Francisco Chronicle, has been doing it since the 90s ago here in the Bay. He's covered just about everything there is to cover, and we appreciate you joining us, Scott, here on 95.7 The Game. How are you?
I'm great, but you reminded me how long I've been doing it. I'm getting kind of tired. Jesus.
Well, it doesn't...
Hey, guys. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. Guru, congratulations, man.
What happened?
Pounds. That's fantastic.
23
Hey,
pounds.
let me ask you a question before you guys quiz me. What do you miss most? What's the one thing that kills you not to get?
You know what? I appreciate the question. It is a cold 20 ounce of Red Bull. Scott, it didn't give me wings. I just like the taste of the carbonation. And that was dangerous to my heart, my whole body, and why I probably put on some. But that's what I miss the most when the Giants are about to play or any game, that cold Red Bull.
Wow, and you were drinking the big one like the size of a tennis can, right?
Yes,
tennis ball can.
But yes, sir. And I survived, Scott, for now. Yes, sir.
That's got some juice in it, too. That's got some jolt to it.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
it does.
Yeah.
So he's been talking about maybe getting migraines because of no caffeine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you're doing that kind of Red Bull, you're going to get some detox migraines, man.
Yeah, Evan told me.
Well, Scott, we appreciate the fitness, the update, of course, with Guru and his Soto progress.
Yeah, right. Like you.
Game recognized game. But, Scott, before we get into, I want to talk about the Warriors and the Niners with you. But before we do that, I saw your piece about the Oakland mayor going up to Seattle to hold kind of a secret, although at this point not so secret, meeting with the Commissioner of Baseball, Rob Manfred. Oakland Mayor Shang Tao flew to Seattle on Sunday to meet with him. What can you tell us about what happened there and if it means anything really for the future of baseball in Oakland?
Apparently it doesn't mean much. It's really a weird story. First of all, I thought it was a great idea of the mayor of Shang Tao to fly up to Seattle to ask for the meeting with Manfred. She asked for a private meeting. And she was respectful. She wanted to go up and do it before the All-Star game, but she didn't want to Bigfoot the All-Star game, and throw that kind of monkey wrench in all the festivities and stuff. So she did it on the QT. She happened to be spotted by a national baseball writer while she was there, so it kind of blew her cover a little bit. But the point is, it was really smart, aggressive, and cool on her part to ask for that meeting, because Manfred had basically said, "Hey, man, Oakland can't do anything. They can't get out of there. They can't walk and chew gum. They can't make a deal." And she knew different, and she wanted to set him straight. And she did. She did it face to face, and I thought that was spectacular. But the ultimate takeaway is that apparently Manfred didn't give a fig. He just didn't. I guess he listened, was nice, probably smiled and all that stuff, offered an iced tea and all that stuff. But apparently it went in one ear and out the other.
So let me ask you this, Scott. For any diehard Oakland A's fan out there, is this thing over in your estimation? Do they have a chance? I know that you said that was a good sign and clever, aggressive, but in your mind, is it over, for the A's remaining in Oakland?
Not at all. I think it's closer to 50-50 than anything. There's so many hurdles that, assuming I'm pretty confident that the major league owners are going to okay the move by a 3/4 vote. I don't think it'll be close. I could be wrong. But there are so many other hurdles up there in Las Vegas, including finding the funding. The A's have to find $1.1 billion laying around somewhere. They have to get all kinds of approvals and okays and submit all kinds of plans. They don't have any architecture plans. They don't have any. There are so many hurdles they have to overcome. For them to give that timeline of 2028, I think is ridiculous. But so I think a lot of things can go wrong. And if stuff goes wrong, like the teachers union is suing the state for giving the A's all that money. If that could hold things up, but that could completely kill the deal. So very good chance they could come back and say, "Hey, man, hey, we were just kidding. We wanted to be here all the time."
Well, I think that's good news. We appreciate the update from Scott Ostler, columnist, San Francisco Chronicle. It's covering everything around the Bay Area. And Scott, so if you're listening to Goo's update about his health, I'm sure you heard our conversation about the Warriors and Chris Paul getting introduced, kind of let's say ingratiating himself with both the media as well as the fan base, and maybe in an unexpected manner. But if he does indeed expect to start, well, one, do you think he expects to start? And if so, does that change the way you look at the hierarchy right now of the Warriors outside of Stephen Curry?
Yeah, I get the impression that that he kind of does think he should start and wants to start, which to me is kind of I kind of get it because we know his history and he's started every game of his entire life. He's probably never had to come off the bench in third grade. You know, he's not a bench guy, but he's 38 years old. Does Chris Paul think he's going to be a starter on a championship contending team when he's like 49 years old? Or at what point does he, according to the situation, maybe take a different role, a different step? I'm not going to say a step back because it doesn't necessarily have to be a step back. So I could be wrong, and he was just in a flippant mood. And, you know, he's kind of like that. Chris Paul, he can be a little bit chippy. He can also be very pleasant and very communicative and very cool. But he has that chippy, chip on your shoulder kind of vibe too. So it's kind of hard to read, but that was not a good sign when he said, you coaching?
Scott, let me ask you this. We were having an interesting conversation earlier, and when you talk Golden State Warriors, you know who the face of the franchise is, Scott? We all know, the great Stephen Curry. And we were talking about the San Francisco Giants, currently 49-41, having a surprisingly good year, 2 years removed from 107. But I'm in love, and I told Evan, with Shohei Ohtani, and my goodness, is somehow he could get to the Bay. But if I were to ask you who the face of the San Francisco Giants is, one, how would you answer that? And two, is it a good thing if you don't have an answer real quick?
The face of the franchise right now, I guess, would probably have to be Brandon Crawford, right?
Is that a good thing, Scott? And I love BC.
No. It's not a bad thing because he's a spectacular guy. He's been a great Giant, wonderful person, great player, all-star caliber player, Gold Glove and all that stuff. But you need to be a championship contender. You need something bigger than what he is now, what he brings to the party now.
Yeah, Scott Ostler here with us from the San Francisco Chronicle, and an update about the Oakland A's situation potentially, or maybe not, moving to Las Vegas along with the Warriors. And now with the Giants, Scott, you know, I feel like I can make a case for, after his performance last night, getting a win in the All-Star game, Camilo Doval being someone that I think folks associate with the San Francisco Giants. Right now, where they are in the season, I know they kind of stumbled into the All-Star break a little bit, picked up a series victory against Colorado right prior to. Where do you see them now as far as the impending trade deadline is concerned? Do you expect them to get aggressive, or do you see them kind of moving around the margins, much in the way Farhan Zaidi has kind of approached a lot of these deadlines, I guess, outside of 2021?
Dan, I don't want to be Farhan on this. I would hate to be in his shoes because you're kind of building for next year, I think. But you don't want to throw away this year. Man, to think about, for instance, when people talking about Shohei and what they have to give up for him if they got him at midseason now, and if they have to give up, like, what if they have to give up Kyle Harrison and Pat Bailey and maybe two, and maybe those two, and maybe another guy or something like that? To me, that would hurt. And I'm down with Shohei, but man, I'm thinking more towards the future a little bit. I think
Scott,
they have other guys that they give. So if they can get a really good impact player at the trading deadline or two, then they should go for it. But, man, I would hate to see them trade away these gems.
Scott, I really need your help. I've been shaking Evan to get his answer.
I'm sorry about that, man.
But where are you at when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers and Kyle Shanahan? We got training camp around the corner, and in 7 years, Kyle hasn't got his quarterback. But you know what, Scott? They've done a hell of a lot of winning, and I almost give him it's more of a compliment because he hasn't had the quarterback. But where do you break down? Does he have it? Doesn't he have it? And is it his fault? And how much credit do you give him or take away from him because of where they're at right now in regard to the quarterback situation?
Man, it's a pretty sweeping question, Guru. It's I give Shanahan a plus. You know, if it's just a plus or minus, and you know, if I have to give him a grade or something like that, it might be like a B plus. But you know, I see the criticism and all that stuff, and I think one of the issues is that I think we all recognize that he's one of the great play designers in football today. You know, in terms of designing an offense, and it's not just us saying it; it's guys like Trent Williams telling me the scope of the playbook and how awesome it is and all that stuff and how it attacks everything. But I'm not sure he's a great play caller, in-game play caller. So that might be a minus. And the quarterback back and forth, it's not all his fault. Injuries have played a big part in that. And there've been so many other factors, but I think I like him. I like Shanahan. I think he has the players. I think the players believe in him. I think they trust him. I think he knows his stuff. And I'm not on the Kyle's on the hot seat bandwagon. I certainly see his faults and shortcomings, but I think he's been really good for the team.
No,
you got, like when Harbaugh was here. Harbaugh was great, right? He did great things, but he inherited phenomenal talent. Some people tend to forget that Harbaugh inherited this world-class roster and did good things with it, but he burned it out too. He burnt those guys out, and I don't think Shanahan does that. I think Shanahan's more of a not just play for 1 year and kill everybody, but play for the long haul. So I think he's been great for the team.
Scott Ostler with us here from the San Francisco Chronicle, and along those lines, because the position that Kyle Shanahan seemingly cannot find and yet is always associated with is the quarterback. And the reports from Adam Schefter about how Trey Lance there hasn't been any trade talks as his status with the 49ers is concerned, I find not unbelievable, but hard in a sense to kind of wrap my mind around, because if he is indeed fighting for the backup quarterback spot, which is completely fair in my mind based on what Brock Purdy did, but if he ends up losing that spot to Sam Darnold, I can't imagine that an organization that's looking for a young potential quarterback hasn't at least picked up the phone and made a call to John Lynch and said, hey, what would it take to potentially pry that guy off your hands? Now, if that's as far as the conversation goes, I'm willing to hear that. But do you think, honestly, that no one has inquired about the services of Trey Lance?
No, I would be amazed if nobody has. I'd be surprised if several teams haven't called, knowing his tenuous status and that they're not 100% sold on him and all that stuff. And, other teams would have to do the same thing the 49ers did when they drafted him, which was take a leap of faith. But he seems worthwhile. He's got a lot of solid things about him. He seems to be a really super heads-up guy and hard worker, and he can learn. He's apparently revamped his throwing style and all that stuff. So, man, I would think he would be a great fit for a lot of teams.
Scott, I got to do this because I retweeted your tweet last night, and as a young kid, I fell in love. Yeah, I fell in love with the game of baseball, and nothing was more sacred than the Midsummer Classic, where all 30 uniforms were on display. The prestige in each city being represented, the stitching, it meant something to me. And I had to fight all these jackals on Twitter last night that didn't give a damn about, I don't know what they were wearing yesterday, but it looked like something from a company softball, the picnic game. Can you just speak to your tweet that just hit me in the cardiac muscle about the prestige that Major League Baseball basically just dropped by not having the teams wear their own uniforms? Scott, you were speaking to my soul.
Well, speaking of soul, that represented a complete disconnect between the business side of baseball and the soul of baseball to me, because man, when I was a kid, the All-Star game came along and they did the pregame introductions. That was a highlight of the year for me. Those guys shot.
Wow.
And not only that, but I collected baseball cards, and I had all these. The uniforms, man, were just magical. There was a magic about the uniforms, like the Cardinal jersey with the two birds on it, or the Red Sox with that B, or Detroit with that serious D, and all that stuff. That stuff was phenomenal, man. When I played kids baseball, little league, or whatever you want to call it, I was terrible, but to put that uniform on, man, that was magic. And I think they just stripped away that magic, and it's tragic. I don't know how many $1 million they got for promoting and pimping those special jerseys, but man, that was wasted money. That was tragic.
Well, Scott, we appreciate you gracing our show with some magic, and we always enjoy catching up with you. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Evan, and Guru. Keep at it, man.
All right, tell the missus and Gabe. Tell the missus and Gabe hello.
Okay, I will. Right. Thanks.
That's Scott Ostler.